I'll follow your lead.
You're going to follow my lead?
Yeah, I'm going to follow your lead on this one.
Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen.
It's been a day.
It's been a day, and so far it seems we're coming in real hot with season 2.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think we should take almost like 10 months off of doing this. Again.
Hey, on the bright side, I feel like this episode is going to be a great source for our blooper reels down the road. So
possibly, but let's hope not.
Let's go.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay. So So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode number 2 of season 2. And I guess let's go ahead and get started, shall we? The sky, it's dark, and the wind is blowing. Come inside. Sit down with a cup of tea while we tell you a little story. A story that lies beyond the Oblong Box. With your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Virginia Poe.
And I'm Levi Leland, back at you again for another episode. Let's see how it goes.
Welcome to Beyond the Oblong Box, where it seems like we left our brains in the oblong box.
In the oblong box, yeah. Yep.
So tonight, we are talking about, this episode is entitled Pictures of You. This is also going to be released the day before the anniversary of Virginia Poe's passing, which is also our 1-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. So happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday, Oblong Box.
Yay, we made it. It was a little rough, but we got there. Yeah.
Slowly but surely, we did it.
Yeah. So last year, this time, we actually talked a lot about various little things of Virginia's life, how she lived, where she grew up, et cetera, et cetera. And I told you all about tuberculosis and things that most people probably didn't want to know.
Right. Yeah.
But tonight, we're actually going to be talking a little bit about the various images of Virginia, the myths and the truths. But before we get into that, wanted to put it out there. Happy 100th anniversary, Poe Museum.
That's right.
It was their birthday, so happy birthday. If you've not been there before, please go. They are a lovely museum. They've got cats. And it is a very good time. I've been to the Poe Museum many, many times for many different occasions, and I've always had a lovely time. Always had a lovely time.
They're great. They have the largest collection of Poe artifacts,
yes,
memorabilia, in the world. So they have the collection. They don't have the building itself has no direct
contact to,
unlike the other museums, which are all houses or places that Poe had lived in.
But
the Poe Museum has the largest collection of
Poe's things.
Yes, and it's really, really amazing to see these things in person.
It's incredible.
Yeah, there are no words to describe. I mean,
his pocket watch.
The pocket watch, the walking stick, the vest, even his socks. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, and so for people who know me in real life, I am I have a thing have a thing about clocks. I don't know why. I even have a friend of mine who is an illustrator and fine artist, and she did an image of me called Father Time many, many years ago. There's actually 2 different renditions of it. And one of them, there's just watches everywhere. It's amazing. And yeah, but I do have a pocket watch that is, and it's my pocket watch, and I do wear it on occasion, and it is from 1874. So it is
Really
my
cool.
pride and joy. I love it. I don't
Really
get to
neat.
wear it often enough, but I
Special
do love
occasions.
it.
Yeah.
Special occasions.
That
Yes.
is a special occasion kind of piece, I think.
Oh, it is. It is. Or whenever I'm wearing my my vest, because it does have the pocket watch pocket and the whole 9 yards. So, but yes, I'm going on about watches and clocks because I was talking about Poe's pocket watch. So, but yes, that is down at the Richmond Museum. It is amazing. I believe they still have his waistcoat.
Yeah.
The white one. Mm-hmm. And the embroidery on that is beautiful. I cried a little. It was just that stunning. It's impressive. It's impressive when you see all the stuff they have in their collection. It blows you away. It blows you away.
It does.
And they've got a beautiful courtyard outside, and they have a lot of special events, and it's always a good time when you go down there.
Yeah, check them out.
So
if you haven't.
Please check them out.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
For sure.
Yes. And then, of course, April 1st, 2nd, Telltale Steampunk Festival, telltalesteampunk.com. The event page is also on Facebook. I will be sharing that link on Beyond the Oblong Box Facebook page for people who would like to come. We are going to be doing a podcast with a live audience that's going to be recorded, and that will be our April the 2nd episode. Very special episode that we've been saving just for this event. So I guess we're going to delve into tonight's discussion.
Get the readers on.
They're not. I wish I could say they're readers. They're not readers. They're not readers. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about the various images of Virginia. I hope I'm saying this correctly, Levi, because my brain's a little it's like all garbled at the moment. But our only known 100% yes, this is her image of Virginia that exists is right behind me here. So this is, Levi, you go ahead and start talking about it, and I'm going to grab it and bring it up to the camera
so that
everyone can see it.
This watercolor,
there we go.
Sure is the one that most people have seen of Virginia, because it is the only authenticated image of her. It's the one that's most produced and published in Poe related books and media. And of course it was painted in 1847 at the time of her death. So it is
January 30th.
January 30th, 1847. It is a post-mortem photograph.
Yes.
And that can attest to the fact that her head is in a bit of an awkward position. Her eyes are half shut. There's some gauntness in her face. And it's believed that she was probably propped up in a chair for the artist to render the painting. That could be why her head is a little bit, tilted to the side, downwards a little bit. We don't know. But
more than likely, she was probably still in bed and may have been propped up with a lot of pillows.
Yeah. Yes. either way, the positioning is awkward. It's certainly awkward, and
Right.
it's probably the first sign of
Rigor mortis.
rigor mortis, and yeah, that she was passed, and so the artist is unknown. Painting is unsigned, and we don't have any documentation or any kind of written confirmation of who the artist was. Some scholars think that it was the nurse Marie Louise Schuh that painted it, but other scholars
We don't know.
have debunked that because she, you know, she dabbled in art. She did draw, but this painting was clearly done by a professionally trained artist, a skilled artist, not just someone who, you know, could draw. You know, so this is the only portrait of Virginia, and now today it is still owned by descendants of the Poes. It is not in any public institution. It's not in a museum. There's reproductions of it, and there's an exact reproduction, like in the Poe Museum in Baltimore, the Poe House Museum in Baltimore. But the original portrait is still in private hands, which is kind of interesting to think about, that it's just in somebody's house and it's the only known portrait of Virginia, and there it is just chilling in someone's house. And we only hope that when those people pass on, that they are leaving it to good hands, and hopefully those good hands are some kind of Poe related institution. So we'll see.
Right.
But I know that originally, as far as Nielsen Poe, for example, the original Poe families who knew of this portrait, obviously, and had this portrait initially, they didn't really want it to be reproduced. I don't think it was even let out to the public until the later 1800s, after Poe, after Mudie obviously had passed, and there was obviously more interest in Poe happening, you know, within not only the country but worldwide. So as more interest in Poe was coming about, there were people inquiring about his wife Virginia, and there's this likeness of her, the only one that we know of. That and so with enough pull, the Poe family did get it reproduced and published, but they just didn't think it captured her true beauty. She was dead. They thought it was a little bit macabre. It was, you know, they didn't want this to be the only way people saw Virginia, you know,
right,
because they did know her personally and they did know her in life, and so they wanted those memories to be you know, perpetual, instead of this, you know, somewhat gruesome likeness of her.
Right.
So,
Right.
but
right.
with enough pull, finally it did get reproduced and published.
Sure.
For the
and we have
public.
it.
So
Clearly, we've had it for quite some time.
Right.
And that is something that, you know, Victorians were very much so with photography. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, because we do have a photo that we are going to discuss briefly, and talk about the other supposed images of her that have already been debunked, that we know for a fact are not Virginia. I feel like I'm talking about myself in the third person. But what became photography and the act of taking pictures and photographs, the first, you know, images, the first development of, you know, what we now know as photography, happened between 1814 and 1819. And that was in France. I won't get, because we're saving this for another episode that's going to happen later on this year. And we'll flash back to it. But it was a process that involved asphalt, with a solution against glass, with an engraving image. When the light would hit it, it would, harden up the asphalt. All the asphalt that was not hardened would then be taken away with a solvent, and that would leave the image, as light was shown through it, that would leave the image on that item. And the earliest known photo that still exists is from 1819. It is on pewter. It is an image of the outside looking from a window. It is not in the greatest of shapes, but it still exists. Like there is some of the image still on there. And that was the one of using that asphalt process, the heliograph process. But the way that we know photography and images, again, I'm going to be talking about this later on this year, talking about the Poe images, Eddie's images, but the daguerreotype photography, that was something that didn't come really, that process was kind of debuted, so to speak, in 1839. But Daguerre had, Louis Daguerre, French affluent man who, very intelligent, was brought in to help expand this process, and he came up with his own ways of doing it on copper-plated silver. Or I'm sorry, copper coated in silver that was polished.
Yeah.
It had to be like, it was almost like glass, but yet if you tilted it away from light, it literally would look black. When you held it towards light, it was like a mirror, and then it was coated with silver iodine. This very in-depth process with various boxes that this plate was put into. The exposure times were anywhere from, 15, 20 seconds all the way to a minute, sometimes a minute and a half. Because of that, they had apparatuses that they would use for the person who was sitting for the portrait to hold them as still as possible, because the exposure was so long. Anyone who does photography, which it's one of my things. I really love photography and I love doing it. And I used to work with a lot of slow exposures and then high speed exposures, especially for nighttime photography, because you get really amazing photos with high speed stuff. 1,000 speed's my jam. I still love taking photos with like actual film. But doing that long exposure like that, you had to hold incredibly still. And I have seen photos from the 1800s where like the rest of the person is like completely crisp, but like their finger might look like it's like fuzzy because their hand was moving. And so as that exposure printed onto that plate, it's it's in motion, so it's all like fuzzy.
Yeah.
And so because they had to hold still, they had chairs that had like things to hold them upright or to keep their head like held in a certain way. They also had stands for people who were standing for their portraits. So these stands, these chairs, people had to hold really still. Part of one of the reasons why you didn't really see a whole lot of folks smiling in these photos is because it was so much easier just to sit there like this than to sit there like this. Yeah.
And a relaxed expression would have given a crisper image, because obviously when you're smiling for too long, eventually your muscles get kind of sore and you start they start to quiver a little bit. Yeah. So, and that could leave a not clean image for the subject. So there was this whole process that the plates had to go through, special cases that the plates had to be then put into once they were fixed, which is the solution that helps to keep the image on there. But these cases that the plates went into after they were developed, they're airtight, because we all know that air
and silver, it tarnishes after a while. So it would lose the image if it wasn't in an airtight case. And then, of course, as years rolled on, like in the 1850s, then there actually started to become other means of, you know, there's the whole tintype photography and everything else. We'll talk about that later. That's another episode with the Poe images. But it was a very lengthy process. My point to this is that it was very expensive.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginnings, the infancy stages of the photography. So not everyone could afford them. Having an image done of your loved one as they pass, that was a very common thing. So oftentimes, having an artist come and sketch someone or paint someone was not nearly as expensive as doing a photograph. And photographs usually were done, at very significant times, like a wedding, a birth, a death. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the postmortem photography was a very, very big thing. And but again, something for the wealthy. Until we got later into the 1800s when it became a more accessible, not quite as expensive thing because the technology changing, things coming forward into the Industrial Revolution, availability of products and, not having such a lengthy process. I mean, the process was still lengthy, but it wasn't quite what it was in the 1820s, 1830s, as we get into the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. So there were photographs, obviously, of Poe. Again, like I said, we're going to talk about that later on this year. But there are also photographs that were allegedly Virginia that we know were debunked.
Right.
Levi's going to talk about that some more.
Leave it to me. There's this one image of Virginia that people have probably seen. Now, it depicts a young girl in a forest and with a basket. And it's an oil painting. It's approximately 39 by 30 inches.
Which is rather big.
Yeah, it is. And so she's got, she's kind of got like this garland of flowers, and her right hand's outstretched picking another flower. And this painting, I guess, surfaced in 1929. Mm-hmm. And it was in the collection of Joseph Thomas Scott, a guy apparently when he came to the United States for a visit. And so he was just always under the impression that this was Virginia Clem Poe, but there was no evidence.
Yeah, there's no actual evidence. Yeah.
It's just a painting of a young girl that could be Virginia Clem Poe, but I mean, if we look at her features, I mean, she just had, pretty normal features.
Little girl.
Yeah, I mean,
small child features.
Dark hair, and a gentle face, and kind of a pale complexion, and that's about it. So I mean, anyone could, so
it could have been anyone.
But everyone just wants, everyone just wants a picture of, oh, I have this painting, and it's and it looks like Virginia, so it is,
Yeah.
Unlike Poe, I think it's easier to find I back myself, a doppelganger.
Oh, doppelganger.
Doppelganger, right?
Yeah,
like
doppelganger.
It's easier to find. Yeah, it's easier to find like one of those in an image than Poe, because Poe is so striking. He is so unique. Just his countenance in his photographs, like
there's no mistaking it.
There's no
when you see him.
It's either Poe or it's not. But like with
mustache or no mustache,
right?
I mean, it's undeniable that it's him.
Right.
Matter of fact, quick aside, I was looking for some antique furniture, and this listing came up for a antique tattoo table, which I was like, oh, that might be interesting to have as a desk. And I'm like, is that Eddie? And I blew up the photo, and like underneath the edge of the table, sure enough, there's an image of Eddie. But even like as this little tiny thing, I was like, and blew it up, and So I mean, it's just just that recognizable that it's him.
Right. And so, and because we have quite a few images of Poe in different styles, in different settings, in different years.
Yeah.
And obviously with shorter hair, longer hair, mustache,
no mustache. Yeah.
We have a better sense of how Poe looked as a person, unlike Virginia, where we just have this one watercolor picture of her. And of course she's deceased in it. So it's harder. It's harder to get a true sense of how she looked overall. So any paintings, any images that come up that, of a young girl with the same kind of characteristics and stuff like that, it's easier to be like, oh, well, that's Virginia. That's got to be Virginia, but that obviously that painting was debunked. And then of course there's the crayon sketch that was found in Italy that went with that alleged self-portrait of Poe. That was terribly crude, and definitely not him, but there was an image that went with it that was very close to the watercolor, the death portrait of Virginia. And this surfaced in like 1930. And there was a guy named Gabriel Wells who he was a rare book dealer, and he
yes.
Yeah. He purchased these photographs, but apparently J.H. Whitty of the Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia, one of the original founders, he kind of debunked it right away that no, this is just a forgery. It's just supposed to, whoever did it, yes, they probably drew it from the watercolor of Virginia, but it's not enough.
But it's not her
portrait of her that was done from life, or that was done in her own,
it wasn't one that was done at the same time that it was being done. It was a copy of a copy
of a copy. So it's just it's just like not even
crayon.
Yes, in crayon, which is a unique,
very
medium.
Strange.
And those are unfortunately just debunked, and at this point we don't really have any other authentic photographs, portraits of her. Now there's one.
Well, there's the one that you and I have discussed that we know for one fact is not her. That people have said that it's her, and it's like, I mean, I'm sorry, I look at that photo and I'm like, that's not Virginia.
Right.
And that's one from.
And that one,
she basically,
it's an oil painting.
Kind of, it's an oil painting. She's kind of got her head tilted a little, like she's looking off to one side a little.
Right.
But she has her hair, the way they have her hair styled, it's almost like whoever was painting this person was painting her like someone from ancient Greece. I mean, she's got her hair piled up on her head with curls coming down, but that's kind of not like this Virginia.
Velvety red sash and a golden dress, and her arms popped up. And the problem too with these depictions of Victorian women is that artists often painted the sitters with the features that were more acceptable for the time. So a delicate mouth, a delicate nose. And so even if the actual sitters didn't really have those features exactly, artists were more inclined to alter them a little bit in their work to make them more, you can equate it today to like a Snapchat filter, right?
Right,
Like they put the Snapchat filter on. Frequently, that's what artists did. So when you see these images, these paintings, or especially artwork, they're going to look kind of similar. They're going to look like, oh, that could be this person, but they all kind of look alike because the features were all painted
of the time,
in the style of the time, So it's very easy to misconstrue someone in a piece of art from that time period as someone else, and it's easy to say it's easy to prove it, I guess, in a way, but it's also very easy to disprove it. So it's just kind of this like back and forth between scholars and professionals in the certain subjects, and it's just a never-ending debate of, you know, until there's some kind of written proof or some kind of solid provenance to the piece itself that says this was painted on this date by this artist of Virginia Clem Poe in you know, in New York or in where, you know, in Baltimore, in Virginia, wherever it was. Until something like that comes with it, you can't really
prove it.
Say with any kind of hard evidence that it's you know, that it's 100% fact or fiction. Virginia's another elusive one. She really is. So I mean, I always hold out hope that at least in my lifetime, something legitimate will surface, whether it be of her or Poe or Muddy or somebody. It's always interesting and it's always exciting.
Well, I guess the last one that we can really talk about is the 1845.
Yeah, and this
daguerreotype.
One that's it's on the internet. You know, it's pretty easily searchable. You just type in Virginia Clem Poe and in Google Images,
one of the images
it does come up with a bit of scrolling. And this one was discovered a few years ago, I want to say. Maybe it could have been almost a decade ago by now.
It's probably I think she did that about a decade ago.
Time goes by so quick.
It's been that long, Levi.
When I know, when I think I got into Poe when I was 12 and now I'm almost 30, it's like, okay, wow, it's been a long time. Holy,
it goes like that.
It really does. I think I'll be meeting Poe sooner than later, honestly, with the way time goes.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, right. Cheers. So this daguerreotype, it's a daguerreotype. So it is a photograph. It's not a painting. It's not an artistic rendering of any sort. It's a photograph of two women. One of these women look very, very much like Poe. I mean, Virginia Poe.
Like Virginia.
Sorry.
And it really, I mean, it's kind
uncanny.
of, it's eerie. It's very eerie.
The scholar that discovered this image, her name is Cynthia Surreal. She's an independent Poe scholar. She's been doing a lot of research on Poe for a long time, trying to unsurface.
She's a lovely person. Oh my goodness.
Very dedicated, very smart, very very hungry to open up a new world of Poe, I think, and really trying to instead of regurgitating the same things we've been
showing it from a different light.
Yes. Yeah. So and so apparently this photograph, this daguerreotype, was in the collection of the American Photography Museum. And so as she was looking through the daguerreotypes, she came across this one, and one of the women in this daguerreotype is very strikingly eerily similar looking to Virginia.
Yeah. Very.
Forensics were done comparing it to the watercolor, because that is an authenticated image. So in comparing it with that, we can get, you know, more conclusive evidence that this person could very well be Virginia Clem Poe. The features line up. I mean, I want to say almost exactly, but I can't. I have to say exactly.
Yeah. And funny thing about ear prints, for those of us who know a little bit about forensics, I have members of my family who are morticians. One of my friends' sisters is a forensic scientist. But Jeannie, from our sister podcast, so to speak, from the 6 Degrees of Poe, in a podcast episode that they had done before, they were talking about forensics and about fingerprinting and the fact that your ears are almost even more so telling of who you are than your fingerprints. Because some people actually are born without fingerprints. So very small amount, but they do exist. But your ears are very different. Obviously, we have two sides of our faces, but our ears, like if you were to lay an image of a person you're trying to find over a image of a person that they're like, oh, we think we saw them at X, Y, and Z. If it was taken from the same angle and you lay them over top, and if those ears match, it is that person. It's even more of a like, you know, like we found the winner.
Yeah, alert.
Alert. This is
it. This is them.
Yeah. So it's, you know, especially with this particular daguerreotype, the ears on the watercolor to the daguerreotype, they line up perfect.
They line up. Yeah,
it's an exact match.
There's a little piece at the top of the ear that's kind of peeking through this woman's hair in a little part, and over the watercolor, the ear lines up exactly. Yep. The lips line up.
The lips, the eyebrow, the brow line, eyebrows,
and even the hairline where it's kind of, you know, like, it's parted in the middle and tucked over the ear a little bit.
But your hairline also has like not like a fingerprint to it, but you know, it's
all very unique to
you.
So if these things line up, it's very unlikely that it's two separate people. If things line up that close, it's got to be the same, or it's just really uncanny.
Or it's your doppelganger, and if so,
and then
turn and run.
It's your William Wilson.
Turn and run. Ding ding.
Yeah, there you go. We gotta make a Poe connection. This is a Poe podcast. And so there's one more thing. There's descriptions of Virginia from her friends that described her as, you know, very, very beautiful, very you know, charming young woman who had a very light complexion and dark hair, but she had some however they put it, some
blemishes.
Thank you. Yeah, some blemishes that spoiled her good looks, and so naturally these blemishes have to be acne or some, you know,
standard breakout.
Yeah, maybe some eczema, maybe something, just, you know, whatever, blemishes. And so this woman in the daguerreotype, this young woman, has some acne on her chin. She has a little bit of acne on her nose, a couple little blemishes. And so it's like, okay, so now we not only have this forensic analysis that pretty much is like, wow, this lines up perfectly, but we have physical descriptions of Virginia from people who knew her that's matching description, or matching the characteristics of this woman in the photo besides. Which is kind of, wow, it's
like, oh,
it's hard to deny. But the problem is the other woman cannot be identified.
Yeah, and that's a shame.
And that's a shame, because that's kind of the deal breaker. It's, okay, here's this woman that's almost got to be Virginia, but who's she with and why?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense, you know, which is unfortunate.
But we still thank you, Cynthia, because without you, this wouldn't have happened. And oh my gosh. Bless you.
we definitely need more people like Cynthia trying to, you know, break every bond, trying to, you know, unsurface the new or what has not yet been discovered, rather than like I said, the regurgitation of what's already been discovered. Like we've been new to that, right? Is that like the lingo that's going around?
Yeah.
We've been new.
We've been new to that. Oh, whatever. And this has been kind of a full podcast episode today. You know, just talking. I apologize for those of you who watch us. We actually had images that we were gonna overlay within our visual, so you could see these images that we were discussing. But something's going funky with our program that we use, and it was doing weird sizes and putting things in the middle, and just wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So what I think we should do, we'll put those up on the page.
Yeah, we'll definitely
We'll put
post
those
some
up on the
links.
page.
Yeah, we'll post some links.
Yeah.
So, on the page, you can just click the links and you can go to these images yourself and you can see exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. We're going to be doing a Patreon, guys.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
we're biting the bullet. That's going to be up this week too. Quite simply put, we are an indie podcast.
Yeah,
this is not cheap.
Anything else you try to do, it comes with expenses and
So we've got a Patreon coming just to kind of help support us, to keep the lights on, as they say. Yes, next week. That's
right.
Guess what next week is?
Another episode, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, another episode. But what month will it be?
It'll
February.
Be February. Oh,
the month of love.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me while I puke.
Oh man, do we have to do this again?
Yes, we're coming back with
to St. Patrick's Day.
Oh my gosh. For the love of Poe.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Right. I guess
Part 2.
Only one thing.
There's so much love to go around.
It's Poe. So
yeah, there we go. So we're gonna be covering some more love. Love for Poe. Love to hate Poe.
We got to talk. Yeah, we'll talk about one of his romances. We have to. We should.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about all of them.
We're going to be talking about a couple. We're going to read some poems. I'm going to cover some more Victorian practices of courtships and engagements and all that kind of fun jazz.
They used to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we are done for this episode.
This was fun. I hope everybody learned something. And I think it's always fun to talk about Virginia because she's so obscure, that it's fun to kind of open these new little topics about her, kind of dig a little bit deeper and kind of get to know her a little bit better,
Yeah.
So
exactly. And of course, there's so much more that we can talk about. And there's things that I'll probably talk about the next time that we, do this for her and just focus on her. I keep doing this because I don't know if you all can see, but this is actually a cameo. Oh, that was my teacup. Of Virginia. So.
And I have mine as well. I think I've shown people, but there
last
she
week.
is.
Last week. Arm. Yep.
Perpetually. So, you guys know I have to be crazy if I ever tattooed on my arm.
Right. Well, my dear, I think this is where we say sláinte.
Thanks, everybody.
And we'll see you all next week for the start of the season of love.
Season of love.
Oh, there's a Clementine. Well, on that note, we're out of here. Bye, sweetheart. Oh.
You've been listening to Beyond the Oblong Box with your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe. Produced by EGL Brothers Limited, with production assistance from Peter D. Come rest in this bosom, arranged and performed by the Ninth Heaven. You can find us online on Facebook at BTOB Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Beyond the Oblong Box. And you can also reach us by email at btob1847@gmail.com. Please support our podcast by visiting us on our YouTube channel or any of your preferred podcast platforms.